Hola, hello everyone. I've been recently faced with a few challenges that caused me to get very anxious. And so today I wanted to share with you two things that really supported me during this time of anxiety. Number one was connecting with others. So reaching out, asking for help. This really truly supported me and made a world of a difference. Normally, I'm the one to stay quiet in private and not reach out for help and just suffer in silence. So I have learned not to do that and reach out and have community and supportive people around me. So that was the one thing that I did that supported me. And the second one is shifting our perspective. So I want to get deeper into this, shifting our perspective over something that's causing us anxiety, how it can ease our worries, how it can ease our anxiety. And then I also want to share the 3 steps that I took to be able to shift my perspective. When we are anxious, we are thinking about the future, right? We're projecting towards the future, something that hasn't happened yet with worry, right? We're worrying about future events. And sometimes this worry comes from, we have concrete reasons why we feel worried and anxious. But I have found in my own life experience that these projections into the future that are negative, right, or that are causing us worry, it's sometimes we create it kind of in our mind, and it causes us to suffer even more than when it actually happens. We're worried about the future, something happening. Sometimes, things that are challenging do happen, and maybe they do make us suffer, but, we go through it and we overcome it. I have found that for me, sometimes when I get anxious and I'm worrying about the future, the picture that I'm painting in my mind makes me suffer more in this moment over something that hasn't happened yet, right? That's the anxiety. And sometimes it's even worse, my suffering now when I'm anxious versus it happening. And I'll explain a little bit more about this so that it makes more sense. But first, I wanted to remind us all that energy flows towards where our attention goes, right? So our thoughts are powerful. And the Buddha taught, he said, with our thoughts, we make the world. So let that sink in. With our thoughts, we make the world. And this to me just shows how powerful our minds are. And the good news about it, and what's really hopeful, is that we have the power to shape our reality. So our mind has just a huge influence of how we perceive the world around us, how we perceive, certain situations, how we perceive challenges, right? And that's where the change in perspective can come very handy when we're feeling anxious. And our thoughts ultimately shape our experience, right? They're tied with how we feel, our emotions. They ultimately are going to influence our decisions and what kind of action we take. And so at the end, they end up shaping our future, right? And determining really the quality of our lives. We know the power of our mind also in creating, these projections into the future that cause us to get anxious and worry. But what's beautiful and hopeful is that our mind also has the capacity to bring us back to a state of ease and calm and inner peace. And it's by pausing and bringing awareness to our state of mind, to our thoughts in this moment that we're feeling anxious, and to consciously choose something or thoughts that are better for us, right? And that's where the change in perspective comes in. And often I feel like we're feeling anxious, and it's because we're viewing our current circumstances from maybe a narrow perspective. We're focusing on the negative, right? And this is something that I found also very helpful, is just that knowing that as humans, we have this negativity bias. It's easier to focus on the negative, to remember the negative than the positive. So I think pausing to really let the positive and all that is good in our life sink in, that's where gratitude practice comes in. That is, it sounds like something so simple, but it makes a world of a difference. Really being able to let those positive things and the gratitude that we feel, all that is good in our lives, really letting those things sink in. To me, changing the perspective when we find ourselves in this negative loop with this narrow negative lens, focusing on some, just one thing, the change in perspective can open up something truly amazing for us and ultimately change our experience and ease our anxiety and ease all our worries. So instead of focusing, because a lot of times when we're anxious, we are focusing on the worst possible outcomes, right? So instead of focusing on this, we can focus on potential opportunities that may arise through these challenges. So opportunities for growing, opportunities for learning. Instead of focusing on the problem, we can focus on a solution and just having this positive and optimistic mindset towards everything, right? Because there is no good and bad. These life situations that feel challenging, there's always some good that comes out of it, right? We come out of them stronger, more resilient. We also, I feel like something that's very important is that we must let go of what we can't control, right? So sometimes situations happen, it's something out of our control. We can't control what other people do or say or think. All we can control is our own internal world, right? And it does really make a difference how we perceive things and how we react to these situations. So I think part of something that is also very helpful is embracing uncertainty, just knowing that it's a natural part. We all experience through this, it's part of life. And instead, we can just open up to be, delighted by what's to come. A lot of times we think, we want a certain outcome on something and, what we want is just this. But if we really open up, there's lots of more opportunities and possibilities for us. So just being open to be delighted by what's to come. And practicing gratitude, like I said before, and really turning our attention to everything that is good in our lives. It could really help us to kind of redirect our attention out from those negative thoughts, those anxiety-inducing thoughts and worries, right? So the 3 steps that I use to ease my anxiety and to ease my worries, the first one is awareness. And awareness is always the first step. Just becoming aware of our state of mind, what kind of thoughts are running through our mind. Are they negative? Do you start to see a pattern of certain things that maybe are triggering you to be anxious or to be worried? And then you simply also notice when you start to feel anxious, right? We can kind of feel it in our body. It tenses up, our heart beats a little faster. Maybe it feels like a little tight, or breathing is faster as well. So you can start to just feel it in your body as it comes with this awareness. And a powerful exercise that I do is just coming back to my body, just like feeling the sensations in my body, right? So you're feeling, that your body is tense, that your heart rate is beating a little faster. Maybe you feel tightness in the chest, so you can put your hands on your heart and close your eyes and just kind of feel it. And I do this, and after I start to take really deep breaths, because when we breathe deeply, we are telling our mind that everything is okay, that everything is safe. And something that is also grounding and helps a lot is putting your hands in your body and your heart. Maybe perhaps you feel comfortable or a comfort in like rubbing your hands like this on your arms. Maybe you want to give yourself a comforting self hug. Any practice like this. So I become aware, I feel the sensations in my body of discomfort, of this anxiety. I begin to breathe deep. I give myself something comforting as far as touch goes and grounding myself. Giving ourselves loving kindness and compassion through these times is very important, because there really is nothing wrong with us. Like, this is something we all experience. We all are human, and anxiety is just a part of our experience. And also thinking about it more as a way, like it's trying to tell us something, trying to tell us something that if we bring our awareness to it, we can slowly start to begin to find a solution. And another thing that I do after this exercise is writing it down. Writing things down really allows me to process, I call it the mumbo jumbo in our heads, right? Because our thoughts, they just come so quickly at us. that a lot of times we feel we start to get into this negative loop and one thing after the other. But really, when we pause to write things down, it slows the mind down, it slows the thoughts down. And really, I always start, maybe they start really negative, and as you're writing, and towards the end, is this much wiser self that comes up with, wiser messages. And it really helps us to process what's going on inside our mind and to get a fresh perspective, this much wiser perspective that is already within us. Maybe it's this our heart that is more wise speaking to us. And usually I get incredible insights too when I do this. That calmer, wiser self, is able to express the wisdom for me. And the second thing that I do, I call it alignment, or to align. And I practice mindfulness and like reframing, right? So here's where the change of perspective comes in. So we become aware of our thoughts and why we're feeling anxious. And then what I like to do is like challenge my negative thoughts. Just ask myself, are these true? Is there concrete evidence to support these thoughts, or that this is going to happen? Or is it just based on assumptions and my own fears? And then I began to reframe and to think about reasons why it's not true. And if I do still feel like it's true, or that it could be something that could happen, I also think, okay, so what would happen if this happens? Worst case scenario, what would I do? What would happen? And usually once we start to do this exercise, we start to realize, I could handle it. It's not that bad. There's things that can be done. Versus when we don't and we're stuck in the feeling anxious and we're really suffering in the moment, it's worse than when it actually happens. I'm sure we all have, right, gone through struggles, through life hardships, that we've even looked at ourselves like, oh wow, I went through that and I did it. So sometimes looking at the worst case scenario too is something that's helpful. And as you write it down, you begin to discover and you start to feel this ease and calm, like, okay, yeah, if this were to happen, I can handle this. Another thing that has really supported me is just having this optimistic outlook or a positive mindset, right? And it's just focusing more on the solution than the problem, and also considering all these moments, challenging moments or difficult moments, as opportunities for growing, for learning. In difficult situations, they always make us be stronger, more resilient. They prepare us for things further down the road. So there's always this wonderful opportunity that comes from these situations. So always seeing it that way as an opportunity is something that's really supported me. For example, I guess I'm gonna, explain a little bit about what was making me really anxious. So my daughter Emmy is 4 and she was starting school. We had tried before and it was very difficult because she was, she's been with me at home. The separation was not easy. And so I was dreading this start because I was expecting that the separation was going to be terrible and it would cause me to get anxious. Like immediately my body would react. I would feel the tightness, like I said, heart racing. And I was just focusing on the negative. Like, is she ready for this? Is it better to wait a few more years before we do this? I picked like a wonderful school that I knew was great and that would help her. And I was just stuck thinking of the negative. So like I said, the first thing I did was reach out for help. So I started calling all my friends that have kids that have gone to school, people that are more knowledgeable in these areas and or maybe have experienced this before. They started to, talking through with them, and I started to feel this, in listening obviously to the advice and feeling supported, that I'm not alone, that a lot of us go through this. I realized too, there is a world of opportunities that comes with this difficult situation, not just for me to overcome, but for her as well. That's going to build strength for us and resilience. And what are all these wonderful things that are going to come out of going to this wonderful school that we chose that is great for her, versus me just focusing on that, one negative thing about it. What are all these great life skills that she's going to learn? So just changing the perspective around it, it allowed me to shift. And then instead of focusing on the problem, the solution. How can I best prepare her for this? So I did lots of things. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I started focusing on the solution and just started preparing. So I'm going to empower myself to help her be empowered as well to go through this situation. And it was wonderful. It was definitely not all the bad things that I expected. It's still work in progress. We're still gonna go the next few days to school and see how it goes. But I just feel good in my decision. I feel good how I prepared. And I think it was also this anxiety, maybe it was an opportunity for me to better prepare for this and work through it. Another moment that I was feeling anxious where I shifted my perspective to is when my second daughter was going to be born. Before, like a few months before, I started to get anxious because I was really tired. And, I had my toddler with me all the time and I couldn't rest. And I started to get anxious about when this baby's born and I'm sleep deprived and waking up every 2 hours. How am I going to do this? And like, just feeling really anxious and that it was going to be terrible and, narrow negative perspective. Of course, I reached out for help. Of course, but in my mind, it was worse than it actually was. And I'm going to go even deeper with this because something happened that was even more terrible than I could have imagined. My dog got injured when I think it was a few months after, maybe my daughter was already like 4 months old or something like that. She got injured to where you had to wear a sling to take her outside, like completely dependent on me. And it was crazy. My day was wake up, not sleeping through the night, obviously, because baby's waking up, wake up in the morning, carry the dog out all day. Like it was just the worst thing that I couldn't even have imagined putting myself in that situation. Of course, again, I asked for help. My wonderful family helped me. But guess what? Even if it was worse, like once you're in it, I was able to just be doing it. And then slowly things start to get better. Obviously asking for help and taking little mindful moments to take care of myself really supported me. And yes, it was a very difficult situation that I went through and it was really hard. But looking back, what I was thinking before without the dog being injured of my, first few months with a newborn baby was worse than what actually happened. So, just keep that in mind. I think we just have to recognize that sometimes that our mind is making things worse, or the feeling that we get and the suffering that we get in this moment when we're projecting the future with anxiety and worry is a lot of times even worse. And we can do hard things. We all have, right? We know we can overcome these things. So the third step that I like to do is I call it action, always taking action. So thinking about what I want and need in that moment that I'm feeling anxious. Maybe it's something I can do. For example, something that I did was reach out to my friends that had already gone through this process to get a little more reassurance, but just really being able to pause and connect. Okay, what do I need or want in this moment that is going to help ease that feeling of anxious feelings and worries. Trying to see here. I always write little notes because I go off in tangents talking to you. But anyway, following these 3 steps. So the first one is awareness. Okay, I'm feeling anxious, right? And taking this moment to pause. What I like to do best is, just aware of this feeling, maybe pause, close your eyes, deep breathing. You can even, sometimes I tell myself, you're safe, everything's okay. That coming into your body, just like really feeling the sensations. Maybe you give yourself some comforting touches as well. And then going into aligning. So reframing the thoughts, these negative thoughts, and shifting with being conscious, right, about what you're thinking and what is a little bit more positive outlook or a more optimistic mindset. And sometimes you can go deep into the worst case scenario if you'd like by writing it down. And the third step is always taking action. What is it? There's maybe something in that moment that you can do to ease that anxiety. And even that practice, right, that we're talking about deep breathing, that is taking action as well. So by following these 3 steps, we can shift our perspective away from feeling anxious and worrying to just feeling more calm. It builds this more positive and more constructive way of looking at things, right? Looking at these challenges and situations always as opportunities. And it just brings us this more calm state of mind. And so I want to repeat Buddha's teaching: with our thoughts, we make the world. And it's just a very powerful reminder for all of us. It encourages us to pause and observe our thoughts and just being mindful of it without judgment, with loving compassion towards ourselves, loving kindness and curiosity too. I think a lot of times if we're feeling these feelings, we're like, oh, I'm feeling this, what's going on? It's also something that is very supportive instead of dreading, like, oh, I'm anxious again. I'm curious, what's going on? What's causing this? And then actively working towards cultivating a mental state that is more calm with a more positive outlook can, help us to feel better again. And for me, practices like meditation and mindfulness and self-reflection, journaling where we get to write it down, are really helpful. These practices also, they kind of train our mind to have a little bit more clarity, more insight, more understanding, and it helps us to calm our anxiety and our negative thoughts and our worries. And it allows us to go through these difficult challenges in life with more ease, with more resilience and inner strength. And it also helps us to just find meaning and purpose in these hard experiences, right? Seeing these challenges always as opportunities. And they help us to, I think, ultimately to contribute to just a more compassionate and loving world as well. So I hope that this really serves you in your journey, or any moments that you're feeling a bit more anxious or worried. I hope it serves you as much as it has served me. So I made a free series for you, and I made it with lots of love. It's my go-to 3 practices, and they're for 3 key moments of your day. One is for the morning, so you can feel light and clear and focused and really focus on what's most important to you. And another practice is to help you during these times of the day when you feel overwhelmed or anxious or stressed. And it's really focused on helping you to reset and reconnect to yourself and come back to those feelings of calm. And then the third practice is for your evening, for when you're just laying in bed, so that you can relax and get the deep rest you need and deserve. And these practices are completely free. I made them with lots of love for you. All you have to do is head over to the link below, or it's also on my Instagram profile. Download your practices and you'll be able to practice anytime, anywhere. Thanks so much for being here and sharing life's journey with me, from my heart to yours.